so that we will finish all the laws that would be covered sa midterm po natin. And hopefully, if we could finish all the discussions today, we will have an asynchronous session next week. Magbigay ako ng activity nyo para or case digest para at least medyo makapag tayo makapag replenish ng ating mga energy kasi mayroon tayong midterm. Okay, so there are I think 4 laws that we will discuss today, no? Before we proceed, do you have questions? You have concerns? May mga ano po tayo?
Sir, kailan po yung exam mismo? Alam ko po kasi nausog yata. Yung,
Okay. Yes. Kailan yung gusto mo, Rochelle?
hindi, tinatanong ko lang.
Hindi. Grabe, seryoso si Rochelle. Saturday tayo ngayon dapat chill. Actually, wala pa akong na what you call this, naisip. So probably middle of the week or mga Thursday, parang ganon. Okay na ba sa inyo yan? Or
Yes.
gusto niyo talaga Sabado talaga? Malayo na masyado, 'di ba? Si Rochelle, ba't ka Rochelle, ba't tayo midterm ng Sabado na mag-asynchronous tayo? Wala ka na, nasa ano ka na, Rochelle, nasa malapit sa Tondo. Ang layo naman ng Fisher Mall sa inyo, no? So, saan ka ba saan pa si Rochelle pumupunta? Malamang, basta. Anyway, so I will announce, but perhaps it would be on the middle of the week next week, no? So the coverage would be from the very start until AMLA, no? AMLA po. And kindly review some of the questions because some of those will, will come out again para lang may idea po tayo. Okay, so I will proceed my lecture for today. And the first law that we will be discussing is Republic Act number 9184. And I will be discussing this cohesively. In other words, patalon-talon na ako para lahat-lahat. Anyway, nabasa nyo naman to para ma-cover lang ng ating discussion. So Republic Act number 9184. This is an act providing for the modernization, standardization, and the regulation of the procurement activities of the government and for other purpose. Ordinarily, if a person buys a property, a private person buys a property of another private person, even natural person or entity, it's up to them. We discussed that in our sales that it's up to you to enter into whatever stipulations, whatever terms of agreement, what would be the form of contract, something like that. No? That's okay because there is no public interest involved. However, in matters wherein private person is dealing with the government on matters of procurement, and when you say procurement here, I will discuss now, this refers to 3 things. It could be procurement of goods, it could be for infrastructure project, and it could be for services or consultancy. So in all these instances, there is this law that would regulate, that would give guidelines for all those for those who are interested to contract with the government. The very reason of this law is to have transparency. In this provision or later slide, you will see that it is more on good governance. Again, if you are a person, you have money and you will buy something, you'll make or you have to see to it that the money that you have would be worth for the property that you are buying. Because may malasakit po tayo, pera natin yun eh. It's yours and then it's hard-earned money. But on government, iba po minsan. There are those people in government or even in private sector that because it is the people's money, it is people's money, sometimes they are insensitive. They would make deals, they would enter into contracts, even if the government is at the losing end or it is an advantageous part. Because again, hindi nila pera. So paano to maiiwasan? How could these things prevented? So this law is designed to somehow eradicate, or if not minimize, these anomalies in procurement of government properties. So the short title of this law is the Government Procurement Reform Act. So again, procurement. So this involves the dealing with the governments. Again, as said, this law is founded on the ideals that good government, okay, good governance is an indication of a better government. Meaning, it is through good governance wherein not only in one sector or one department of the government, but possibly in almost all branches, departments, instrumentalities of the government, so that it would show that the government is properly running, government is taking care of its business and taking its accountability for the people. So good governance. And we have here the principles why this uh, law was passed for a while. Okay, so and when you say government here under Section 3, it includes all instrumentalities of the government, including government owned or controlled corporations. So state colleges and universities are included. That's why if UP, for example, or other state colleges would purchase properties, then that is covered by this law. The first reason why this law was enacted is to have this transparency in the procurement process and the implementation of procurement program or contracts. So we know what transparency is. No? Transparent, so nakikita, see-through, walang tinatago sa procurement process and also sa implementation of the contracts. Sometimes kasi two aspects po ito, procurement process, no? So ang pagpili kung sinong mananalo and mismo pag may nanalo na, anong mangyayari sa contracts? Are the terms of the contracts really implemented? Di ba? Sa mga materials. Kaya nga minsan nasasabi ng mga tao na nababawasan ng ilang inches ang pavement, etc., etc. So we have here again the transparency not only on the process but also on the implementation of the contract. Competitiveness, we discussed this in other laws. It has the same bearing, meaning it gives equal opportunity to all that are interested and qualified, eligible to enter into public bidding. Despite the fact that you are a small company, if the government extends this type of treatment or this type of service to a big company, then under this principle of competitiveness, whatever treatment or whatever action that the government did for that big corporation as a public or as a bidder must also be given to you. Letter C here would be streamline of procurement process. When you say streamline, well, it makes the process simple. Before, without this law, it's very hard really because departments vary on matters of their policies, on how, on even forms. That's why, by virtue of this law, there is now the simple process, and also it adapts technology. You may now enter into bidding through internet, as we will discuss later. System of accountability is, of course, we know that public office is a public trust. Public officials are there not really as our bosses, but servants are there for public service, such that they would be either appointed or elected. It doesn't matter. They are answerable to the people for their actions because of the money that being paid to them, the money that they have been in custody with, or they have transactions, this money are taxpayers' money coming or came from the people. That's why they would be accountable. And the later provision, you would know that even private persons could be liable, could be accountable for the actions if it if they connive or they conspired with public officials. Public monitoring, very simple, talks also on the process and the implementation of contracts. Okay. So here, the public must be aware. No? There would be monitoring. Hindi lang natin alam na, oh, tapos na ba yun? O, kailan matapos yun? So there is this to really to see to it. In fact, you would know na ang mga contracts ngayon kinikriticize pag parang patago, no? So kailangan ganun talaga yan siya. That those are the policies or those are the ideals why these laws were enacted. As mentioned, scope of application, or rather scope and application, there are three things involved in procurement. We have infrastructure projects. I don't have to explain that one. Highways, airports, buildings, etc. Goods, no, supply of goods, and of course consulting services like for example COMELEC, no? COMELEC or armed forces the need consultants to implement or rather to teach uh, their employees or yes employees of the new technologies. Remember before when we first shifted from manual election to online or not online to computerized voting, di ba? So hindi natin alam, and even the teachers, no? So COMLEC has to enter into contract with Smartmatic and etc. etc. That is part also of procurement. In fact, it has been an issue before also the award of the contract to Smartmatic. But that's not our point. Our point here is that that is included as part of the scope and application or the subject matter of the law. I will hold you responsible for the definition of terms. We have here BAC. One thing to remember with BAC is that it is not a person. It is composed of three persons and more. No? So it is the point here is a collegial body. So the decision there is come up by the majority of the members, and this is the body that is in charge on uh, bidding process, bidding documents, accepting bids, making awards, etc. And the bidding documents are documents issued by the procuring entity. When you say procuring entity, it is the department, agency of the government that needs to acquire something. For example, Department of Health could be a procuring entity on matters of face shields, face masks, etc. And when you say bidding documents, these are the documents prepared by, in our example, DOH, so that this will serve as a guide for bidders. What are the things required? What are the things to be submitted? When would be the deadline of the bid, submission of bid? When will be the opening of the bid? So on and so forth. So that is on bidding documents. And bid, very, very self-explanatory, assigned offer or proposal. Competitive bidding, without any other abnormal or extraordinary circumstances, the rule provides that procurement in government must be through a competitive bidding. We have here the definition of a competitive bidding, which is open to participation by any and all interested parties. So it starts from, we will discuss this, no, ang steps of methods or steps rather in procurement. We will discuss that in a while, no? So advertisement, pre-bid, etc. Competitive bidding, again, by the word, it opens the bidding to all who are qualified, all who are interested and qualified. But there are situations wherein competitive bidding is not possible, or if it's possible, it is not advisable because of the circumstances. Like, for example, when the country or the department is faced with urgency, calamity, etc. So, in this instance or instances, competitive bidding may be not resorted to, but instead there are alternative modes of procurement. I-discuss ko na din na sa alternative modes of procurement, kadalasan dito po ang mga tinatawag natin na corruption, ganito po. Kasi wala nga competitive bidding. Sometimes it's between the government agency concerned as a procuring entity and that particular person. So nonetheless, that is competitive bidding. Consulting services we have here when the government agency department wishes to acquire the services of technical and professional experts, consulting. So it's more of services. And GEPS here refers to the website, the procurement system wherein under the law, you may submit your bidding documents, etc., through internet. Goods. Goods here is very encompassing. It includes almost everything that the government needs, except for services and infrastructure projects. Again, there are three matters under the coverage of this law on matters of contract. We have goods, and then we have infrastructure projects and consultancy. When you talk of infrastructure projects, we know this, no? Alam naman natin, bridges, ang dami dito, bridges, irrigation, flood control, waters. I will leave that to you. But I would like to emphasize that this infrastructure projects covers not only newly introduced or new infrastructure. It could be only for rehabilitation, improvement, or even demolition of these buildings and properties. So in that case, that still forms part with infrastructure projects and therefore subject to the provisions of this law. Procurement, by the word procurement, you acquire, no? You acquire goods, again, goods, consulting services, and infrastructure projects. Take note here that lease of goods and real estate is part of the word procurement, or it's included. So in other words, if the government would like to lease its property or will lease a property, then it has to pass through also in the normal instances or instance situation, competitive bidding. That is in this letter. As I said, procuring entity refers to any branch, department of agency of the government. And then section 6 and section 8, no? Section 6, very simple. It talks again about the standardization of the process and the forms. As I said earlier, before, the processes and forms vary between and among departments. Now, under this law, they are made simple and they are in a standard form. In other words, the same form and the same process. This is to ensure, to avoid confusion. We have to avoid confusion. Alam naman natin, basta walang system, di ba? Confused ka. Pag confused ka, doon pumapasok yung mga dagdag kung mga ano-ano. Okay. Section 8, again, a reiteration that it is encouraged that bidding or procurement could be done through electronic means. And that is proven by study that less contact with persons in the government, less corruption. That's why the law encourages it. We will discuss more of this when we proceed with the law on ease of doing business in the Philippines. Now, this is important. There are 6 steps in the procurement process, and we will discuss this one by one, beginning from the preparation of bidding documents, followed by invitation to bid, receipt and opening of the bids, bid evaluation, post-qualification, and finally, award implementation and termination of contract. Let's start with the first step, preparation of bidding documents. The bidding documents are prepared by the procuring entity. Let's have an example. For instance, DOH, Department of Health, is trying to secure or will acquire, will procure uh, PPEs or face masks, face shields, goods, in other words. So the bidding documents there would be prepared by the DOH. We're talking here of normal situations, no? So may mga bidding documents yan, prepare nila yan. And what are the contents of the bidding document? Because we know that bidding documents are important because this will serve as a guide for bidders, no? What to accomplish, when to accomplish, etc., etc. So what are the things included in these bidding documents? We have, of course, first and foremost, the approved budget for the contract. Kasi pag wala pong hindi napapakita na hindi approve yan, wala pang budget, well, of course, it will discourage people or bidders to participate. That's why there must be an approved budget for the contract. Now, of course, instructions to the bidders, as I said, on the eligibility, capitalization, for example, bid qualification, post-qualification, date and time of pre-bid, etc., in terms of reference. Other matters would include plans, etc. So these are the things included. So I will hold you responsible for this. No, just familiarize yourselves on the thing. No? Now, section 18 says that if the government entity would like to procure or to acquire something, take note it refers to goods. So, there must be no branding. So if I am Department of Health, I need some medicines, for example, or I need an equipment, then in the description of that item or equipment, it must be on its characteristics or its performance requirements. Kung sa military naman yan, ano yung mga performance requirement? LTO naman yan, kung sasakyan, ano yung requirements? It's not on the brand name like if computer, Sony, LG, what else, so on. That is not the case. That's why there was one case na bakit ganyan. So the general rule is that on procurement, there is no branding names, except lang if what is being acquired is a spare part or an assembly of a certain equipment that will not be compatible if with other brands. So in that case, pwede po yun. Again, the general rule, no branding on the goods that would be acquired. It should be described per its characteristics and its performance requirements. Ano ba yung gusto ng entity na yan? Nangyari po ito sa PhilHealth, di ba? Pag-ibig, ano sila ng computer. So, kailangan ng specs ng computer. And then, let those competitors, Sony, etc., participate and bid. But again, it is based on characteristics and performance. Section 19 talks about access, equal access to information. So there are a lot of bidders or prospective bidders. If I'll give access to one of the bidders or I'll show them or give them photocopy of the documents they need, and if the other party wants it too, then it should be given also. Equal opportunity in all stages. So, yun po yung sabi dito sa Section 19. Now, first step again is preparation of bidding documents. So, remember, let's assume that all the documents related to bidding are already intact, prepared, complete. The next step is invitation to bid. But prior to the invitation to bid, the law requires that there must be a pre-procurement conference. So bago Department of Health, ang example natin kanina, bago ang Department of Health maglabas ng kanilang invitation to bid, mag-conference muna sila to review really kung nandyan na ba lahat ng documents. So the purpose of the pre-procurement conference is to ensure that all the things that are to be published, that are to be given to the bidders are there already. So yun po yun. The moment natapos na yan siya, no? So this is the reason the pre-procurement conference shall assess the readiness of the procurement and will review all relevant documents. After that, then that's the time that the procurement entity will advertise and will make an invitation to bid. Under Section 21, as much as possible, or ang word dito is widest possible dissemination. And apart from that, the invitation to bid must be posted in the conspicuous place of that procuring entity. Apart from that, it should be apart from the posting, it should be in a newspaper, published in a newspaper of general circulation, and finally, it would also be through internet. So yun po yung sa advertising. So as again, invitation to bid, ito po yung laman nun. So notice to all, di ba? You are invited to blah 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 for the bidding of, parang ganun. Sa newspapers makikita niyo ito palagi. So what are the contents? Brief description of the subject matter, statement, criteria, date and time where the bids must be submitted, the opening of the bids, the approved budget, source of funds, etc., etc. So yun po yung laman ng mga invitation to bid. Now, nagpalabas na ng invitation to bid, no? Kasi una, bidding documents complete, tapos nag-pre-procurement conference. Then after that, palabas na sila ng kanilang invitation to bid. And after that, mayroong tinatawag na pre-bid conference. Supposedly kasi, after the invitation to bid, the interested bidders will already submit their bids, their respective bids. However, under Section 22, may mga tanong kasi yan kadalasan. Whenever bidders or interested persons will receive the invitation to bid or have been notified, there may have been questions, no? May mga questions pa, ano to, bakit ganito, or technicality, blah 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 blah. So all of those could be answered through or during the bid conference. In fact, under Section 22, it is mandatory. It is the procurement agency through BAC, no? Bids and Awards Committee, that will conduct this at least one pre-bid conference. And in fact, if hindi po yan patawag, pwede. Kung nakaligtaan man, any interested any interested bidder or prospective bidder may request through writing that a bid conference will be conducted. So after the bid conference, then that's the time that the BAC will give reasonable time for the bidders to submit their respective bid. So yun na. Tapos ng pre-bid conference, tapos ang mga bidders ngayon, nag-isip na sila kung magkano yung kanilang ibibid. Then that's the time, the third stage here is receipt and opening of the bids. Of course, the receipt and opening of the bids here would depend on the terms or the dates and instructions stated in the bidding documents. Now, we have here Section 23 in relation to Section 24. The difference, take note, is that in Section 23, the subject matter here are goods and infrastructure projects, whereas in Section 24, consulting services. Now, in Section 23, the BAC or its designated office shall determine the eligibility of the prospective bidders based on bidders' compliance with the eligibility requirements set forth. So bottom line here, I will summarize that When the bids are received, it is the bank that will evaluate whether or not each bidder has complied with all the requirements set forth or as stated in the bidding document. And take note also that all the documents submitted by all the bidders must be under oath, meaning sworn to, notarized, because in effect they will certify on the correctness and authenticity of the data information and even the documents that they have submitted. The last portion of this slide again reiterates the other mode where you will submit your bid, and that is through internet, no, electronically. Now, consulting same lang same pa rin sila, no? Same yung kanilang process. Now, submission and receipt of bids. Take note that the bid have two or has two components, technical and financial. If you recall the Senate hearing on Farmali, Senator Gordon was saying that, well, if the BAC, no, has been meticulous enough in determining the technical requirements, then Farmali could not have been qualified. Kasi ang mangyari nga dito is that ang bid consists of two parts or two components. We have the technical and we have the financial. Take note that this should each must be contained or inside a sealed envelope but must be simultaneously submitted. Now, as mentioned, the time and date and place for the reception of bids and the opening of the bids have already been discussed or stated in the bid document. Take note that bids submitted after the deadline shall not be accepted. What would happen if you will modify or will no longer continue with the bidding? Section 26 says that a person, a bidder, may modify his bid for as long as he will do it still within the prescribed period to submit the bids, meaning before the deadline of submission. He may modify, but the modification must be contained in another envelope, sealed envelope, which will be identified as modification. Now, what would happen? Take note, what I was discussing is on modification. How about withdrawal? Will you inform the BAC that you are withdrawing your bid, or will just ignore it and hope that your bid will not be uh, chosen or the project will not be awarded to you? The answer is in the last bullet of this slide. You are required to inform the BAC that you are withdrawing your bid in writing. Otherwise, if you will fail to do so, and in case the award was given to you and you cannot continue, your bid security will be forfeited. Take note that prior to the bidding, all interested persons, bidders, must post a security bid. A security bid is a guarantee that these bidders are really serious, are really interested, and there is no collusion among them, etc. etc. That is on section 26. I have discussed section 27 already on bid security. Section 29 talks about the bid opening. It is publicly done. And as I said, it should be based on the time and date and place stated in the bidding documents, because it is a criminal offense for a person, a member of the BAC, to delay the opening of the bid to accommodate another. We will discuss that is covered by the succeeding articles. I will check attendance. Esmeralda, are you around?
Present po.
Okay. Alcaraz?
Wala po ata.
Okay. And of course,
Ay, dito from...
Grabe, galit na galit yan siya, Winnie Flora.
May
Papa?
event po kasi sila. Nagsha-shoutcast po. May event po sa org nila.
Oh,
Parang team
grabe.
game, ganun.
Ganun. Sige. Sige lang. Okay, thank you. Kapit na tayo. Kapit na tayong antukin. So, tapos na. Nag-submit na sila. So, submit na. So, na-open na. Pag open, dito na ngayon yung evaluation. I-evaluate ng back lahat ng sinubmit. Kung naka-qualify ba sila based dun sa requirements, sa standards na stated in that bidding documents. So take note again that there are two components of the bid. Under Section 30 on bid evaluation, what will be evaluated first is the technical aspect of the bid. This is where whether or not the bidder has complied with all the documents, requirements, qualification, etc., that are required of them. Otherwise, kung wala, then it will be marked fail. And therefore, the BAC will no longer proceed to examine or evaluate the other envelope that is on financial aspect. But in the event that it complies with the technical component, then it will be marked pass, and then the other envelope will be evaluated on matters of financial component. Matters of financial component, ito na po yung magkano yung bid niya, no? Kaya nga sabi ko kanina kay Gordon, si Gordon was saying na sana kung sinunod lang to yung bid evaluation, hindi nangyari yun sa Parmali. Kasi sa technical components pa lang ma-disqualify na sila. Kasi makikita doon yung kanilang performance. Kinasuhan pala sila sa Taiwan, marami pa silang kautangan, marami silang tinakbuhan, something like that. This is not my words, but this is Senator Gordon's words based on that Senate investigation. However, ang others mo claim naman na hindi na to applicable kasi during that time, ang procurement na in-employ nila, it's not competitive bidding, but instead, alternative mode of procurement. So we will discuss about that. Again, competitive bidding applies only in natural circumstances, ordinary. However, if there are urgent needs, calamities, emergency, etc., then yeah, the competitive bidding may not be advisable, may not be feasible, and therefore government may employ with some other alternative modes of procurement. Now, so bid for the procurement of goods, Section 32 and Section 33 naman yung sa isa. No? So sinong mananalo? Depende. If you're talking about goods and infrastructure projects, then you're talking about the cost, no? The value, the amount, pera, money. So we have here ang pinaka-mababa, lowest calculated bid. Whereas if you talk about, if you talk about consultancy, highest rated bid, no? Because it is on services, performance, quality of service, so it is based on the rating, no? Sa rating sa pagtingin ng bank. Now, after that, let's just assume that somebody is to be chosen na, no? Na magiging kung sino where to award the project or the project. So that is under step 5 on post-qualification. In post-qualification, if you're talking about goods and infrastructure projects, then the bidder with the lowest calculated bid. If you're talking about consultancy, then or consulting services, then the bidder with the highest rated bid. Yan po yung sinabi ko. Now, after the bidder is determined to be having the lowest calculated bid for goods and infrastructure project, and for services naman or consultancy highest weighted bid, then they will be required to post another security, and that is performance security. And if they fail to do so, or if they fail for some other qualifications, then they will be post disqualified. So pag award, hindi pa i-award sa kanila, titingnan muna sila, ay kayo pala po, kayo yung may pinakamababa na bid, o ikaw po yung pinakamataas na rate sa bidding. So therefore, sila po yung i-consider. However, under the last bullet here, if there are other requirements that the bidder failed to comply or other conditions, then they will be post-disqualified. And ano mangyari? Balik na naman tayo kung sino po yung next lowest or next highest, depending if it is goods and infrastructure projects, would be declared as the next doon i-award ang project or ang kontrata. Failure of bidding, take note, lumabas sa quiz natin, there are instances wherein there could be a failure of bidding under Section 35. No bids are received, no bid qualifies, and then the bidder qualified but he did not proceed. Take note here, in these instances, it will be re-advertised and there will be a rebid. Negotiated procurement comes only after first and second bid failed, no? So pag may first bidding failed, wala munang negotiated procurement. We will discuss about that later on. And after the second bidding and then failed, and that's the time that negotiated procurement could be available. Jaira is around. Wala pala, no?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. How about Michelle?
Wala po.
Thank you. Kabang?
Wala rin po.
Tapos ano po, Will, inform mo ako kung sino dito yung IS ha, kasi hindi ko makita yung file, so I could take time para alam ko kung may IS dito. Dasilio Kim?
Wala po. Hanggang kay Santos po wala.
Hanggang kay Santos wala. Uy.
Sir, present po, Benemerito.
Okay, Jaira, you are around. Okay. So wala si Feliciano, wala si Herrera, wala si Lopo, wala si Navalta. Pedregosa?
Wala po.
Banyani.
Santos?
Wala po.
Of course, nandito si Sir Susano.
Wala po.
Grabe, no? Torico. Sa dalawa, tatlo, apat, lima. Could you imagine? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kaya nga minsan, sabihin na lang natin, ay nako, grabe class, kung stress kayo, mas ang teacher nyo. And then yung time pa natin, sabi ko kay Sir Ramil naman, sabay yung attorney, wala na talagang magkahawak nito. Ano ka naman sa mga estudyante. Grabe yan si Sir Ramil ng ano eh. But of course, I love teaching. Kaya lang minsan, imagine no, na parang it's not worth the effort, but again, that's an obligation. So next is award and implementation and termination. So granting that there has already been the bidder has been identified, then there would be an award, no? Within a period not exceeding 15 calendar days, then there would be... Narinig yung maingay, class? Hindi naman.
Hindi naman po.
Sige. Maingay dito sa aming gilid. May isang sasakyan niya, inuurong-urong niya. But anyway, ay, grabe. Talaga tong balik na talaga to sa online, no? Ang dami ng mga reklamo ng mga tao. So, Section 37, that is when a notice of award will be given. And we'll go to here, within 10 calendar days, di ba, may notice of award na. After that, 10 days, magpirmahan na ng kontrata. Pwede rin yan maging 20 days, pwede naman in 30 days, depende lang po sa procuring entity. Minsan kasi, ang procuring entity requires the approval of the higher ups. So therefore, it will take time. Yun po yung sabi dito. Now, once there is already a notice of proceed, no? Once there is already a contract, 7 days therefrom, there will be an issuance of the notice to proceed. From the time the bidding, the process, from the time the bids were open up to the awards, it must be not exceeding 3 months. Otherwise, it is deemable. Section 39 talks about performance security. Again, this is another security that are required of the bidders in order for them to really perform their function, that hindi po nila iiwan. I discussed this a while ago that for failure to enter into a contract or for failure to post this performance bid while you were earlier identified as the successful bidder, you may be declared disqualified or post disqualified. Section 41 talks about the authority of the head of the procuring entity. If the head of the procuring entity, for example, is DOH, and the secretary of DOH being the head finds that there is irregularity in the bidding process, he may declare a failure of bidding or not award the contract, or he may refuse all the bids. No? Of course, he must have basis for doing that. And what would be the grounds? We have here, if there is a prima facie showing that there is a collusion between the parties, meaning between the officers, the back and the bidders, etc. Or the back itself failed to perform its function under this law and for any justifiable grounds. We have discussed a while ago that lease contracts are part or must also be through competitive bidding under this law. Section 47, this is on disclosure. This requires that if you are a bidder from the onset or from the very start, you must declare if you are related to the head of the procuring entity. And the requirement of the prohibition here extends to relationship by blood, consanguinity, or by marriage, affinity within third civil degree, or sa ating layman's word, hanggang sa uncle or sa auntie at saka pamangkin. So kung pamangkin ka ni secretary, bawal ka magbid. Or tito mo ang nagbid, bawal din po yon. If it is learned later on, then there would be automatic disqualification. This is the thing that I was telling you a while ago, that while the rule provides that there must be competitive bidding, there are instances where the government would employ other modes because of circumstances, calamities, emergencies. Ano ba yung bearing nito? Kaya nga minsan sinasabi ng iba na sa kanila, nasasayahan yung mga politiko in their places. Politicians are happy whenever there are calamities. Why do you think that's the case? Kasi po, hindi naman nasasayahan, pero once there are calamities, mas madali po kasi ang releases of funds. In normal circumstances and normal situations, just like this one, competitive bidding. So makikita mo, nandun talaga predetermined or pre-audited, makikita mo lahat-lahat. Whereas if there is a calamity or there are calamities, then matatawag natin yun na parang quote-unquote post-audit na, because there will be a release of funds and then government officials or whoever will be allowed, no, to purchase goods to combat or to answer for the calamities, no? Kung ano man yun. And then later on na lang nila yan i-liquidate. Unlike sa normal circumstances na dapat malaman muna mga cost nito, etc., etc. That's why yun nga madali yung maggastos dun sa tawag nating calamity. So alternative methods, no? So first there is limited source bidding. From the word limited, dito po nakikita na ng procuring and procuring entity set of pre-selected suppliers or consultants. Nandun na yan, na ano na nila yan, na determine na nila, and then from then on, doon na lang nila kukunin yung mga bids. Then we have single source procurement. Okay, no more bidding. By the word single, siya na lang po yung mag-submit. Others, repeat order. No more explanation on this. There was a previous order, same supplier, and there are replenishment of goods. Shopping naman is the procuring entity requests from persons the submission of quotations. Most often, negotiated procurement would come in, as I mentioned, whenever the first and second bidding process failed. There was a failure of bidding. So here, it could be availed of. And pag negotiated procurement, yun, yung sa Farmali, negotiated procurement, nilapitan, magkano po ito? Sige, order kami ng ganyan. Ganun po yun. Unlike kung normal sana, o magkano, ito lang yung budget namin, magkano sa iyo dyan, magkano sa iyo, and so on and so forth. So you would see now the difference. What would happen if you are not happy with the way the BAC conducts the bidding process? You may file your protest. But take note here that the protest will not interfere or will not stall or will not stop or put on hold the process, the subsequent process of bidding. And where will you file your protest? You will file it, of course, with the head of the procuring entity in writing upon payment of the protest fee. Take note that the decision of the head of the procuring entity is final, and the bidding process will continue. Now, if still you are not happy, agreed with the decision of the head of the procuring entity, then under the law, you may go to the regional trial court. You may question the decision of the head of the procuring entity. Ito yung sinabi ko kanina na bidding process will not be interrupted by your protest. It will continue. In fact, if you talk about contracts, no, here, as I said also in section 58, if you are not happy with the decision of the head of the procuring entity, you go to the regional trial court. If you notice Duterte, or if you recall, probably you have heard that Duterte on his build was saying long time ago that judges will watch out if they will issue a temporary restraining order or an injunction to stop the build projects of the government. In relation to that statement, this law says that it is only the Supreme Court who has the sole jurisdiction to issue temporary restraining orders and injunction. So bawal na po yun na regional trial court judge ka, pa-stop mo yung proyekto ng gobyerno, infrastructure, kasi maantala nga. Ganon din po yung regional trial court or court of appeals. So it is only the Supreme Court. 655. Here, it talks about arbitration. And we know what's arbitration. Arbitration comes whenever parties would agree that if there are feud or there are dispute that would come out later on the implementation of the contract or even on the interpretation of the contract, they would refer that to a person or persons or body that they have previously chosen. So here, arbitration po yun. So, ang maganda dito, mas mabilis yung arbitration. That's why on matters of procuring goods, services, and infrastructure projects, the government under Section 59 requires that all contracts entered into on those matters must have a provision that talks about arbitration. Under Section 59, arbitration or terms on arbitration, agreement on arbitration should form part of the of contract between the government and the winning bidder. So yun po yung sabi dito. The process of arbitration shall be incorporated as a provision in the contract. Yun po yung sabi po dito. Now, if you're not happy with the decision of the arbitration, then you will go to the Court of Appeals. The last portion of the Government Procurement Reform Act talks about penal clause or clauses. When you speak of penal clause, it refers to the punishment, the penalty, and here it talks about imprisonment. In fact, in Section 65, without regard, or without prejudice rather, the term used prejudice. So, maliban doon sa mga liability mo under the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, Republic Act 3019, if you are found guilty of violating the provisions of this law, meaning the Government Procurement Reform Act, you will be punished with imprisonment of not less than 6 years in 1 day, but not more than 15 years. And what would be your acts or omissions being punished? We have here enumerated: open any sealed bid. In other words, before the intended date of and time of opening, you already peep through. Diba? Sinilib mo na, bawal po yun. Or sabi natin kanila, i-delay mo in order to accommodate your relative who is also making a bid. Or you put pressure to the back. Takutin mo sila na pag hindi mo ako pinapanalo, something like that. No? Splitting of contract, ito, arrangement mo to sa mga bidders. May mga ganung mga bagay kasi na atian na lang, di ba? Mamaya, on the last portion, makikita natin what are the acts and what are the common acts committed by the bidders. That is violation of this law. As I said, while this law refers mostly on the acts and omissions of public persons, if you are a private individual and found to have colluded with the public official, you too would also be liable, and your penalty would also be imprisonment if it is warranted. So here, private and public officials could be charged together if there is conspiracy or collusion. And what would happen? Public official shall be temporarily disqualified to hold public office for a certain time. The court will fix for a certain years. He may not be appointed or elected or run in public office. But if you are a private individual, you will be forever barred from entering into government transaction or entering transaction with the government. Bidders, kadalasan dito, akala mo mag-bid ka lang o okay lang, participate ka lang, may liability ka. Could you imagine yung ginawa? Same imprisonment, no? Private individual. Bakit? Anong ginawa ng bidder dito? Number one, two or more bidders agree and submit different bids as if they were competitor, pero sila lang pala. No? Pangalawa, siya lang mag-isa, pero gumawa siya ng mga maraming bids para pakita na maraming bidders, di ba? So, kasabwat yung back, marami daw, 5, pero yung 4, focus lang. Siya pa rin gumawa noon, siya rin manalo, di ba? So, if that is found, you will be liable. Naman, bigaya, no? Bigaya ng mga bidders. When two or more bidders enter an agreement which call upon one to refrain from bidding, no? Pareho ka muna dyan. Or withdraw mo yung bid mo kasi sa'yo na yung ibang proyekto. Parang gano'n. Those are acts which are punishable committed by the bidders. And of course, there is also civil liability. When you talk about civil liability, damages also. And administrative penalty, as mentioned, you will be first offense, you will be suspended and for 2 years and so on and so forth. So these are the penalties. So basically, that is on our first law tonight, the Government Procurement Reform Act. Let's go to the next law that is on PDIC. This PDIC law is very simple. I will discuss this in whole. No? So PDIC, this is a body created by law under Republic Act number 108496. This is an insurance body. Under this law, we have here that all banks, banking institution, and lending establishments must be a member of the PDIC and must ensure that the deposits of their clients are insured. This is to encourage people. Actually, this law is to encourage people to deposit their money. And they are assured that no, nothing will happen to your money because there are those that they are more comfortable if they see their money, they are, iba tinatago talaga. But the government is saying, come on, deposit mo yan in order to generate economic activities. And of course, it will trigger development. However, may mga bangko na nagsasara. Anong mangyayari sa mga pera natin doon? Parang gano'n. So PDIC is here to answer. It somehow intended to restore the faith and confidence of the depositors to the banking system. So yun po yun. I will hold you responsible for the definition of terms. We have the bank, the receiver, insured bank, uninsured bank deposit. No, these are self-explanatory, and I know you have encountered this in your other subjects in your past semesters. Now, ito po yung sinabi kanina na if you have a deposit in a bank under PDIC law, that amount must be covered by an insurance. And the insurance under the PDIC, the maximum amount is 500 pesos per depositor per bank. So it does not matter if you have so many accounts in a bank, you will be entitled only to 500,000 as maximum insured amount. Okay? Now, you may ask, so sir, what if the total deposit of that person exceeds 500,000? Shall we say 1.5 million? What would happen to the difference of 1 million because only 500,000 is given to him as the insured amount? Under the later provisions, you would know that that person is still entitled to the 1 million difference. However, that should be made as a claim in a liquidation proceedings that would follow. So in other words, it is wrong to say that 500 ka lang, wala na yung iba. No. Ang 500, bigayan upfront as an insurance. Okay? But if your deposit is beyond that insured amount, you may still claim that in the ordinary liquidation proceedings. Yun po yung sabi. And when the bank is, by the way, the bank is ordered closed by the Monetary Board of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Yan po yung mga power nila. And then once the bank is ordered closed, PDIC would be named as the receiver. And we know what is a receiver. We have discussed this in FRIA. Here it talks about the requirement of foreign banks and lending companies which have subsidiaries here or branches here in the Philippines. Still, they are covered, meaning they must be member of PDIC, di ba? Sa mga bangko, PDIC member, and that all deposits there are insured with the PDIC. We have discussed this already, 500,000. Take note here that if you have two accounts in the bank, one individual and the other is a joint account, the joint account should be treated separately. In other words, it would be entitled to a separate insurance, and your individual account should also be covered by separate insurance. Section 10 is very important because it tells us the narrative of what would happen if the monetary board or how would the monetary board of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas orders the closure of the bank. Take note here in section 10, when you say the bank, section 10 talks about when can we say that the bank is insolvent. Okay, we have here an insured bank shall be deemed closed on account of insolvency in any case in which it has been closed for purposes of liquidation without adequate provision being made to it. So in other words, when you say the bank is insolvent, it cannot accommodate the withdrawals of its depositors. Okay? So therefore, mag-close siya, and then there is no arrangement made to that depositors. So now, the moment the monetary board orders the closure, then PDIC will take over, and that the PDIC will give the insured amount to the depositors. Tatawagin po yan sila, and then sabihin sa kanila, ganito. Diba? Sa Cubao, nangyari po ito. Sa aming lugar dati, nangyari din po, may closure ng bank. So pag closure ng bank, doon, di ba, magkakaano yung mga tao, magagalit na agad sila. So the PDIC will announce when to release cash, or if not, when to have the transfer deposit. No? Pwede rin po, transfer deposit in other insured bank. Section 14 is a new provision added to this law, no? Bagong innovation po ito. Ito po yung sinasabi na paano ang monetary board mag-implement ng closure order. Take note here in section 14. The notice of closure is simultaneous to the closure itself. There is no need for an advance notice. For example, there is a rural bank in Bulacan. And then there were complaints already that that rural bank can no longer accommodate withdrawals of its clients, depositors. It reached the central bank. And upon further investigation, the central bank really finds that this bank cannot operate anymore without, harming the depositors. So it issued an order of closure. In section 14 here, what would happen is that the monetary bank, the monetary board, representative of the monetary board, along with the representative of PDIC, will go to that bank, will serve the order of closure to the highest ranking officer of that bank. If he is around or she is around. If not, it will be posted on the opening or the door or premises of the bank. And take note here, the moment the notice is given, that is the time also that there is a closure. Wala pong advance notice. And thereafter, take over na po yung PDIC noon. Ang mangyari doon, pupunta na ngayon ng PDIC at ang monetary board sa Bulacan. Kakatok yan sila kay kuya, security guard, kadalasan umagang-umaga pa para wala pang mga tao, wala pang transaction. And then sasabihin nila kay kuya, papasok kami. Sabi ni kuya, sirado pa. Taga Central Bank po kami, Monetary Board, may closure order po dito. Papasukin mo kami. Pag hindi pinapasok, under the rules, matatalo na po ako, this PDIC and Monetary Board could use reasonable force to open the door. Or if not, to avoid the untoward incident, even before they would go to that bank in Bulacan, they could seek assistance from the PNP. No? Samahan sila so that ganito. And then pagpasok nila, wala na po. They will take over. May mga kasamahan nila, mga bookkeeper, lahat-lahat, nandun na yan sila. Tapos sasabihin lang dun sa bank manager and everybody, cashier, teller, janitor, bookkeeper, etc. Please step out, bring your personal belongings. We are from PDIC, we will take over. We will contact you. And no more documents that will be brought outside. I shared an experience before na yung manager dun sa isang bangko sa Negros, dadala pa yung titulo, pinigilan talaga siya. Okay? And even, wala ka dun, nasa bahay ka, and you are an officer of the bank, if you're holding properties of the bank, then you must, within a reasonable period of time, surrender that to the PDIC. So ito po yung first, notice of closure, section 14, then reasonable force, we have discussed that already, directors immediately surrender, and we have also the assistance of the police enforcement. When can you have your claim? You may file your claim for insurance with the PDIC within 24 months or 2 years from the time of closure. And once you file your claim, the PDIC under this provision is given 6 months from the date of your filing of claim to release that. Otherwise, if they will not release that without any justifiable reasons, they will also be liable. And their liability also include imprisonment, 6 months to 1 year. Here, the question is, are all depositors required to file a claim with the PDIC before they could get their insurance? The answer is no. Here, only those with deposits more than 100,000 will file a claim. So if your balance deposit as of the time when the bank was ordered closed by the Monetary Board of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is less than 100,000 or 100,000 and less, you don't have to file a notice of claim. There are exceptions though. Even though your deposit there is 100,000 or less, yet you have accountabilities, may utang ka, may obligation ka, or may other account ka dun sa, or guarantee ka, or rather the guarantor ka sa asawa mo, or whoever, or still, you are a stockholder of a corporation, and the corporation has also account with that bank. In that case, despite the fact that your deposit is 100,000 pesos or less, you still have to file your claim. That is in this article. When claims are filed, of course, you will go to the PDIC or pwede na rin yun ngayon, mail. We have discussed this already. Who are required to file deposit claims? Obviously, depositors. How? You present your valid deposit, etc., and other identifications. So that is the law on PDIC. Again, basically, PDIC is created to ensure that the deposits of people or depositors in the bank are covered by insurance. This is done by requiring all banks operating in the Philippines to be part of member of PDIC. Whenever the bank is ordered closed, the depositor has a maximum insured amount of 500,000 per depositor, regardless of account, except if it is a joint account with another person. That depositor has 2 years, 24 months to file a claim, and the PDIC has 6 months from the time of receipt of the claim to release that insurance amount. Okay, so that is on our discussion on PDIC. Let's go to this Republic Act 1405, or the so-called the secrecy of bank deposit. This is in line also with the previous law, but this time, kanina, ina-assure kayo walang mangyayari sa pera niyo sa bangko. Kahit mag-close ang bank, insured po yun. Ang sobra, pwede mo i-claim during the liquidation proceedings. That's basically the gist of that law. This time, sa bank secrecy naman, in relation to that, you are encouraged also to deposit your accounts with the bank. This time, sinasabi na, huwag kang mag-alala. No one will know that you have that much money in the bank. Not even your wife, it is not through your joint account. That is Republic Act 1405, an act prohibiting disclosure of or inquiry into deposits with any banking institution and providing penalty therefore. So again, the law envisions that all are discouraged to hoard their money sa kanilang mga bahay. Encourage them to deposit so that banks will use their money for other activities, economic activities, and thus will trigger more activities. And in so doing, there would be development. Section 2 is very important. It talks about confidentiality of all deposits. Take note, the word absolutely confidential in nature. The general rule, in other words, in Section 2 is that all deposits are absolutely confidential in nature, such that no one may examine, inquire, or look into it without, number one, your waiver, meaning here, with your permission, or second, you are an impeachable officer. Impeachable officer are those named in the Constitution, like the President, Chief Justice, okay, Speaker of the House, Senate President. These are impeachable officers. They could not be removed from office except through impeachment proceedings. So now, if you are that officer and there is an impeachment proceeding against you, then under Section 2, your deposits in any old bank could be checked. Remember before, kay Justice Corona, diba? Chief Justice Corona. And, of course, if there is an order from the court wherein you are accused of a crime of bribery or dereliction of duty, or in any other cases in court where your money deposited in the bank is actually the subject matter of the case. This Section 2 is the latest amendment to the previous slide that I have discussed. Basically, it only adds one more exception. And that one more exception is found in the middle, highlighted in blue. No? Kasi yung kanina, ito po yung tatlo sa baba. Written permission of depositor, impeachment, competent order of the court in cases of bribery or dereliction of duty, or any other case where the money deposited in your account is the subject matter of litigation. The addition here is when the monetary board authorized, no? We have here an examination. So, makikita natin mamaya doon sa anti-money laundering law that the anti-money laundering law could investigate, no? And with that, pwede rin po yan siya. That is on section. This is now the summary. So, nandyan po yan siya. Upon written permission of the depositor, in case of impeachment, upon order of competent, etc. These are other exceptions to the secrecy of bank deposits. In other words, if you are accused of these crimes, or if you fall under the situations enumerated here, then your bank account could be inquired into. Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, money laundering, we discuss natin mamaya, or sinabi mo na insolvent ka, then the BIR, we know under FRIA, is given the authority to check on your records. Unclaimed balance, we will discuss that one. PDIC have discussed that already. Human Security Act and so on. Section 3 and Section 5 refers to the acts and penalties of a person working in the bank that would disclose information or details about your bank deposits to other persons without your authority. It would be unlawful for a bank teller to tell his friends, "Uy, si Atty. Celis may account dito, ganito yun, ganyan." Ano, hindi po pwede yun. Okay? He would be or she would be liable. Could you imagine the imprisonment there? Kahit yun yung ginawa mo, makulong ka nun. So that is on that particular law, no? So we have secrecy of bank deposit. It ensures that all deposits are absolutely confidential in nature, except those exceptions that we have discussed. Unclaimed Balances Act. Unclaimed Balances Act, very simple. This is a law wherein it requires banking institutions, lending institutions to inform the treasurer of the government of the Philippines whenever, or to give them the list, the data of persons which have deposits in their banks who are dead, and those who have deposits who have not transacted therewith for 10 years or more. Ganun po ang sabi dito. So, unclaimed balances. So, ibig sabihin, balance mo to sa bangko. May pera ka sa bangko. Eh, ikaw pala, most likely dead, or kung alive ka man, hindi ka nakapag-transact sa bangko 10 years or more. So sabi dito sa batas, hey, bangko ka, managing ka, kailangan mo mag-submit sa amin. So we have here, what is the coverage? All credits and deposits held by person known to be dead or who have not made further deposits or withdrawals during the preceding 10 years or more. Yun po yung sabi dito. So anong gagawin ng bangko? Yan, ito yung isubmit mo sa Treasury, no? Sa Treasury ng Philippines. Names, etc., etc. Names and last known residence, magkano yung pera niya sa bangko, kailan last na deposit niya or transaction, mayroon ba siyang interest. Maliban doon, this data will be posted on a conspicuous place on the premises of the bank at least 60 days from filing thereof. Pagkatanggap ng gobyerno nito, ang Solicitor General, which acts as the lawyer of the Philippine government, will file a petition in the regional trial court of the place where the bank is situated. The petition would be, in effect, asking the court to release the amount of that person who is dead or that person who has not transacted for more than 10 years or more, and that amount will be released in favor of the government. But before even would be published, and also it would be given a copy of the complaint, or someone would be given to that bank. Now, there is a need for publication of the summons in a newspaper of general circulation in the Philippines. This is to ensure that there could be a tendency that that person who has account with the bank have creditors. May mga kautangan pala siya. Namatay na siya, hindi natin na-missing siya, may kautangan siya. So, if you are that person, then you are given the chance to put your claim during the hearing before the judge would resolve and would release the money in favor of the government. Yan po yun. Ang tawag nun is cheat, a proceedings wherein your private property and claim assets will be taken back by the government, especially if you die and you have no heirs or you have no will. Kasi alam naman natin on the rule of succession, pag namatay ka, all your properties would go down to your children, and if you have no children, will go up to your parents. If you have no more parents, then you go sideward to your brothers and sisters. And if they're none, wala na talaga, wala kang last will, babalik yan siya sa gobyerno. So that is on this thing. Okay, so after notice, if you feel that that person has obligations on your part or in your favor, then you will go to court and file your claim there. Section 4 and Section 5 uh, tells us about the liability of the officer in the bank that will not release the money or that will not comply with the requirements of reporting those persons with accounts inactive for 10 years or more. So basically, that is the law. That is the law on Unclaimed Balances Act. It is a law which requires banking institutions and lending companies to report to the treasury of the government all deposits which have been inactive for 10 years and more, and those who have been dead. But of course, when a petition for escheat proceedings will be filed by the Solicitor General, it will be published to give notice to all interested persons. So yun po yung sa unclaimed balance. And the other law that we will discuss is Truth and Lending Act. Truth in Lending Act is a very simple law. It talks about full disclosure of all the charges that are given or that would be charged to you if you transact with the bank even before the consummation of your transaction. So, for example, pupunta po ako ng bangko, magka-car loan po ako. Pag car loan ko, ang bangko na yon must be specific in writing of all the charge. Attorney Celis, yung amount ng car is 1.8 million. Yung down payment na required is 800,000. No, malaki. 300,000. Okay? And then, 200,000 kung mag-trade-in ka pa ng sasakyan. So, ang balance mo is, palagay na natin is, sample lang, 1.2 million. So, 1.2 million, Attorney Celis, kailan mo ito babayaran? How many months? 36 months. Ito po yung computation namin, blah, 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 blah. Ito po, monthly bayaran mo. Or kung mag-loan ka naman sa bangko, ganun rin. Magkano i-loan mo? 2 million. Ito po yung mga charges namin, blah, blah, blah. After all, ito po yung net loan mo makukuha. So with that, there would be no more changes, there would be no more additional charges. Kadalasan kasi, excited na yung tao, pagkuha mo ng sasakyan mo, sasabihin ng bangko, ay, so sorry, Attorney Celis, actually, our teller, forget about this. There is still one charge that we have to do something. That is not allowed. That is in Truth in Lending Act. If you go to the bank, makikita mo to ng mga Truth in Lending Act. So ano po itong batas na to? This is to make sure the awareness of the people. No? Kasi kadalasan, ikaw, excited ka lang sa gamit, hindi mo na natitingnan kung ano yung mga charges. No? So in order not to take advantage, no? In order that the bank will not take advantage over that client or customer, this is the law, the Truth in Lending Act. Again, as usual, hold you responsible for the definition of term, board, credit, finance charge, creditor, person. Ito yung sinabi ko kanina. Obligations of creditors to persons to whom credit is extended. So it must be in writing. For example, we have here, the cash price or delivered price of the property to be acquired. Magkano ba yun? Sample natin kanina, 1.8. The amounts to be credited. Down payment po ako ng 300. May dagdag pa akong trade-in sa sasakyan ko. Assess nila ng 200,000. So worth 500,000. Difference between 1.8 and 500,000, 1.3. Yeah. So on so forth. Charges, kailangan mo babayaran, so yung total finance charge, etc. You know this, no? You're accounting student. But in law, our point here is there will be no more changes once it is already informed or once it is already given to that particular client. Walang add-ons. Kasi pag mga add-ons, doon po naluloko yung tao. Yun po yung Truth and Lending Act. Section 6 talks about penalty. So that's it, no? So, for a while, I'll switch presentation. Okay, so this is the last law that we will discuss. Again, Truth in Lending, very simple. This talks about AMLA, no? Or Anti-Money Laundering Act or Anti-Money Laundering Law. When you say laundering, we have discussed this in our initial meeting. When you say laundering, you are cleaning the dirt of that money. No? Ang pera na yan galing sa masama, galing sa illegal, and therefore hindi mo masacirculate. So dapat mong hugasan. Through what? By entering into transactions. In movies, we could see this by cleaning that in casino, di ba? Pa-change nila ng chips. And matalo manalo, paglabas nila, linis ng pera nila, iba na yung serial numbers, di ba? So because of that, this is the law, similar also to other money laundering laws elsewhere in the world. No? So in fact, we have here na this is to maintain or to preserve the integrity of bank accounts and to ensure that the Philippines shall not be used as a money laundering site. No? So kadalasan may mga nakukulong na dito, especially yung last time, di ba, na sa news, ginamit yung kanyang ATM, pinasukan ng pera. Payag naman siya kasi bibigyan siya ng 10%, tipo maganda na rin yun. But in that case, you will not allow that one. If you have knowledge and if you are keen in, you know, exercising your rights or, you know, vigilance on the provisions of the law, then you will not allow somebody to use your ATM or to make use your account. Kasi yung pumasok na pera no, malay mo, hindi pala yun, namomonitor na pala yan. The moment you withdraw, huli ka. Although later on, mapawalang sala ka, kahit wala. In our facts, you're not really involved, but ang hassle, nandun na, kasuhan ka na media ka na, nakulong ka na, and then eventually, wala din. For what? So it is not allowed. Okay? That is not a good practice. In fact, discourage po yan talaga. Ganong mga bagay. So we have here some features of the what you call this one, the AMLA, no? So it criminalizes laundering, and there is now coordination with the other intelligence financial unit of other countries, and of course there is this relaxing of secrecy of bank deposits, and there is also the freezing and seizure of properties. And another amendment of the law is that the benchmark, before kasi 4 million. What do we mean by 4 million? If you have a transaction with a bank, single transaction, daily transaction, single or combined 4 million a day, then your name will be reported to the Anti-Money Laundering Council. Ngayon, today, it has been reduced to 500,000. So expect that if you are dealing, transacting, depositing, withdrawing 500,000 pesos from the bank, then your name will be reported because that is an obligation of the bank as laid down by this law. The reporting there is okay. It's more of seeing to it that the money that's involved in your transaction is legit. Okay? Legitimate ang source nun. And later on, if they notice na siya po to, then they will bill. Suspicious lang if for the first time, ganun agad and wala kang basis. No? So yun po, lowering. Then it expands the requirement of suspicious transaction. AMLA now may examine your bank account. However, they must ask court for a order. Take note of the covered persons. No? Covered persons, sino? Covered persons, ibig sabihin, sino ang may requirement to report these transactions? No? So if you are a bank, foreign exchange dealers, di ba? Magpa-exchange ka ng pera dyan. Insurance companies, security dealers, or even jewelry. Bibili ako sa iyo ng alahas worth 800,000 ngayon. Bayaran ko ng cheque, ngayon yung date or even cash. Then if you are a security under the law, you must report my name. Okay? So, covered transactions, I've discussed that it has been reduced to 500,000. Monetary instrument, this involves coins, drafts, securities, and other. And I hold you responsible for the definition of who is an offender, a person, proceeds, transaction. Now, unlawful activity. This is important because any money or property derived from this enumeration of crimes are considered fruits of the poisonous tree, meaning it is a product of an illegal activity. So therefore, it could be frozen, it could be sequestered, or it could be forfeited if it is proven in court. So for example, pera galing sa drugs, no? Or graft and corruption, plunder. When you say plunder, it is also involving money, but 50 million and above. Wetting, masyao, smuggling, etc. I will hold you responsible also for this. Will not come out in our quiz though, but this is just, I included this for you to have idea that sometimes people would say, Bakit yung account ko sa bangko, sa news natin, no? Bakit yung account ko sa bangko, freeze nila or something like that? You are accused of these crimes, then by all means, it could be under the law. Precious metals, ito yung pinaka-importante, no? Section 4. Because it enumerates an unlawful activity. Hindi ka nga source. You are not part of the activity wherein the money was derived illegally, but you know that that money is not legally sourced, yet you transact with that or you hide, then you will be still liable. So section 4, number 1, transacts said money, instrument, or property. Converts, transfers, disposes of, moves, di ba? Ganon. Di ba yung example ko last time na ang money galing sa ransom tapos binibili nila palagi, na-monitor na sila. 1,000 peso bill, kahit ano lang bibilin para mabaryahan. Parang barya, itatago kasi yung cleansing, laundering, and then na-monitor sila, huli sila. Okay? Or kahit kagaya ng counterfeit money, di ba? The first thing ako, pag withdraw mo, counterfeit, or pag nabigay sa'yo na pera, counterfeit, pag bili mo, huhulihin ka, but you have to explain later on bakit napunta sa'yo. Second, conceals or disguise the true nature of the source. Hindi po yan dito. Attempts or conspires, you allow, etc. No? So these are the enumerations of acts that would constitute an offense under money laundering. Now, prosecution, you will be charged, of course, prosecuted, and gets imprisoned. The very authority under the body that is tasked primarily on the implementation of these provisions of the law is, of course, the Anti-Money Laundering Council. Sila po yun. In fact, the Anti-Money Laundering Council, if it finds that ito si Atty. Celis, yung pera niya sa bangko is duda kami, ganito. They may file, no? They may ask the court, no? Apply before the court a freeze order bago nilang kasuhan. Kasi ang nangyayari niyan, hindi pa sila makakaso kasi kulang mang ebidensya nila, pero baka pagkaso nila later on, wala nang pera sa bangko, na-withdraw na. There are those that happened in the past. Senate investigation, Sinapolis, Senate investigation, and na-focus na doon. Hindi na na-focus sa pera sa bangko. So all the while, the prosecution was not able to secure timely the freeze order. Wala na, withdraw na. So wala na. Because walang freeze order, the bank will not withhold your money. That's yours. Parang gano'n. So here, in my case, may hinala yung AMLC. Ngayon, they cannot yet file a case against me. What they did is that they convinced the court that, hey, court, there is a possibility, there is a prima facie case that Atty. Celis' account in that particular bank is a product of wetting, etc., etc. If the court is convinced, then the court will issue a freeze order that would last for 6 months. And during this 6 months period, this is the time given to the AMLC to file whatever case or action against me. Otherwise, if after the lapse of 6 months period, no case has been filed, then the freeze order will be automatically lifted. Take note also that the court has 24 hours from the filing of the application to act on the freeze order. Yan po yung sabi dito. Freeze order. Yeah, 6 months. I've discussed that, section 10. Now, once you receive a freeze order and then no case has been filed against you yet, you may also ask the same court, the Court of Appeals, you may also ask for the lifting of that freeze order. Hey, judge, hey, justices, blah, 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 blah. This is not the case, something like that. If the justices or the Court of Appeals hears you, then they will lift the freeze order. Now, take note, freeze order, ang pera or ang property hindi pa nagalaw. Another remedy here is civil forfeiture. There is already a case filed. Okay? And then the court, or rather the government may file a forfeiture proceedings, di ba? Solicitor General, di ba? Ngayon si Kalida, we could file a forfeiture proceedings against you. Mga properties mo, yung mga properties mo sa public official po ako. Tapos nakasuhan po ako ng plunder. And then may mga properties po ako sa San Juan, sa Forbes Park, sa kung saan-saan. Then pwede yan siya na i-forfeit. Okay. Now, bago na forfeit, nabenta ko na. Okay. Payment in lieu of forfeiture. Bago na forfeit, smart din ako, nabenta ko na lahat-lahat. And then after the hearing, I finally get a conviction. Convicted po ako. Pero wala na yung property. Anong mangyayari ngayon? Sabi po dito in letter C, still, the court may, instead enforcing the order of forfeiture, order the convicted person or offender to pay the amount equal to the value of the said monetary instrument or property. So despite the fact that I already disposed of those properties that could have been forfeited, the court may still issue an order directing me to pay the value of those properties or the monetary instrument, the value of the monetary instrument. So thank you all for still listening. I know we have finished AMLA and we will have a quiz. We will have our midterm exam on Wednesday or so. I will announce. AMLA again, it is a law which seeks to protect the circulation or the transfer of money from people to bank, etc., etc.